You ever notice how the conversation isn't really over when it's over? You walk away, but in your head it just keeps going. Anxiety loves that moment. It grabs the replay button and runs it non-stop, like a bad song stuck on repeat. Suddenly you're analyzing every word, every pause, every smile or lack of it. Did I sound weird? Did I talk too much? Did I not say enough? Anxiety convinces you that the other person has a microscope on your words, when in reality, they've already moved on. They're probably thinking about their own to-do list, not your sentence structure. But anxiety doesn't let you see that. It makes you believe you failed at something that wasn't even a test in the first place. And here's where anxiety gets sneaky. It pulls you out of the moment. You're sitting there in a conversation, but you're not really there. Your body's present, your words are coming out, but your mind is running circles around itself. Instead of listening to the other person, you're listening to your own doubts. You're rehearsing what you might say next, or regretting what you just said. You're not connecting, you're performing. And when you're performing, the conversation feels heavy, forced, unnatural. That's anxiety hijacking your presence. It steals the one thing that makes conversations meaningful, being fully there in the moment with the other person. And when anxiety takes over, your brain doesn't just stay in the moment, it sprints ahead. You're nodding, maybe even smiling, but inside you're already writing the ending to the conversation, and it's never a good one. You're predicting how badly it's going to go, how awkward you'll sound, how they'll think less of you. You're not hearing their words. You're hearing your own forecast of failure. And the sad part, that script you're writing in your head makes you miss the actual conversation happening right in front of you. You ever notice how sometimes, the moment you start talking, it feels less like a conversation and more like a battle? Not a battle with the other person, but with yourself. Anxiety does that. It takes something as simple as talking and flips it into survival mode. Suddenly, you're not sharing your thoughts, you're defending them. You're not opening up, you're protecting. Every word feels like it has to prove something, like you're on trial, even when nobody's accusing you of anything. That's what anxiety does. It convinces you that every conversation is dangerous territory, that one wrong move could expose you, embarrass you, or make someone think less of you. Think about it. When you're calm, you can talk freely. You're present, you're curious, you're actually hearing what the other person is saying. But when anxiety shows up, your brain flips a switch. Now it's all about protection. You tense up, your chest gets tight, and your words come out like armor instead of connection. And the crazy part, most of the time, the other person has no idea. They're just trying to have a normal conversation, and you're sitting there feeling like you're under interrogation. It's almost like anxiety takes your hand off the steering wheel and grabs it for itself. It says, forget listening, forget connection. Your only job right now is to not mess this up. And the second you believe that, the conversation changes. Instead of leaning in, you start bracing yourself. Instead of responding naturally, you start rehearsing lines in your head. Instead of engaging, you're defending. And here's the thing about defense. It builds walls. You can't connect through a wall, no matter how carefully you build it. I've seen it happen in the smallest ways. Someone asks you a simple question like, "How was your weekend?" A safe, easy question. But if anxiety's running the show, suddenly it feels loaded. You start thinking, do they really care? Am I talking too much? Should I sound more interesting? Should I keep it short so I don't bore them? So instead of just answering honestly, you shrink your answer down, rush it out, and then immediately start scanning their face for approval. That's not conversation, that's survival mode. Or maybe someone disagrees with you. Normally, disagreement can be healthy. It's part of how people learn from each other. But when you're anxious, disagreement feels like danger. You feel attacked, even if they're just sharing their perspective. And without even realizing it, you go into defense. You explain too much, you over-justify, you backpedal, or you shut down completely. Not because you want to argue, but because your brain says, protect yourself. And the problem is, when you're in that mode, you stop being curious. You stop really hearing them. You stop asking, why do they see it that way? And you start asking, how do I make them see me differently? That shift, right there, is where anxiety steals the conversation. It takes away the connection and replaces it with a performance. And performances are exhausting, because the whole time you're not just thinking about the words coming out of your mouth, you're thinking about how those words are landing, how they're being judged, what they might mean later. It's like running two conversations at once, the one out loud and the one in your head, and the one in your head is always louder. And here's the heartbreaking part. The people you're talking to usually aren't demanding this performance from you. They're not expecting you to be flawless. They're not analyzing you as harshly as you analyze yourself. They just want you to be there, present, honest, but anxiety tricks you into thinking you need to defend yourself at every turn. So instead of giving people the real you, you give them the guarded you, and guarded conversations rarely feel satisfying. You leave feeling drained, replaying it all, wondering if you said too much or not enough. Anxiety in survival mode doesn't just change what you say, it changes how you listen. Because if you're on defense, you're not actually listening to understand, you're listening to respond. You're listening for danger, you're scanning for cues of disapproval, you're waiting for the moment you'll need to explain or justify yourself again. And that robs you of the very thing conversations are meant to be, a chance to connect, to learn, to feel seen, and to see someone else. Think of it like this. Imagine you're sitting at a table across from a friend, but instead of focusing on them, you've got a giant shield between you. You can hear muffled words, you can throw a few back, but there's no eye contact, no real presence, no connection. That's what anxiety does in survival mode. It hands you a shield you didn't even ask for, and yeah, it might feel safe behind it, but it's also lonely, because you can't feel close to someone when all you're doing is protecting yourself. And what's worse is how invisible it looks from the outside. People see you smiling, nodding, talking, but inside, you're fighting. Inside, it feels like a storm. Your heart is racing, your chest is tight. Your mind is racing through possible outcomes, and yet you're trying to make it all look effortless. That inner tug of war, that's survival mode. And it's exhausting because the whole time, you're not just having a conversation. You're battling your own brain. Here's the kicker, survival mode isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up in silence. Anxiety convinces you it's safer not to say anything at all. So you hold back, you nod instead of speaking, you agree just to move things along, and later you regret it because you never actually said what you felt. That's still defense. Defense by silence, defense by disappearing in the moment, and again, it's not connection, it's survival. But the truth is, most conversations don't require survival. They're not high stakes, they're not tests. They're just people trying to connect with other people. Anxiety just tricks your brain into thinking otherwise. It puts you on edge, makes you brace for impact when there's no impact coming, and that's why it feels so heavy. Because you're carrying armor into moments that never required it. The thing about survival mode is that it's not your fault. It's your brain's way of trying to protect you. Anxiety thinks it's helping. It says, if I keep you alert, if I keep you on guard, you won't get hurt. But what it doesn't realize is that in trying to protect you, it's also isolating you. It's keeping you from the very connection that would actually bring relief. Because connection is what calms anxiety. When you feel understood, when you feel seen, when you realize you don't have to defend yourself, that's when anxiety loses its grip. So, survival mode isn't the enemy, it's just misplaced protection. The problem isn't that your brain wants to keep you safe. The problem is that it doesn't know you're safe already. That's why awareness is so powerful. Because once you notice, hey, I'm in survival mode right now, you can pause. You can take a breath. You can remind yourself, this isn't a courtroom. This isn't an interrogation. This is just a conversation. And that small reminder can start to dismantle the walls anxiety builds. Survival mode convinces you that conversations are battles. But when you step back, you realize they're not. They're bridges, and bridges don't need defense. They need openness. They need presence. They need you, not the rehearsed, guarded version, but the human, honest version. And the moment you stop defending and start engaging, that's the moment conversations stop being exhausting and start being life, giving again. And here's where anxiety takes an even bigger toll. It steals the very thing conversations are supposed to give you. Connection, influence, understanding. That's what we all want when we talk to someone. We want to be heard, we want to matter, we want to feel that what we're saying has weight. But when anxiety jumps in, it snatches that away. Because you can't influence someone when you're busy second, guessing yourself. You can't really connect if you're rehearsing the next line in your head. You can't be understood if you're rushing, mumbling, or shrinking your words down to sound safe. It's like trying to shake someone's hand while you're holding on to 100 bags you can reach out, but they're never going to feel your grip. Anxiety loads you down with all these invisible bags. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood. And so, instead of reaching out fully, you give this half version of yourself, and people can feel that. They might not know exactly what it is, but they feel the distance. They feel the hesitation. And that hesitation is exactly what blocks the connection you're craving. Think about influence for a second. Influence doesn't come from perfect words. It comes from conviction, from presence, from someone believing in what they're saying so much that you can't help but lean in. But when anxiety hijacks you, you lose that conviction. You start watering down your thoughts, apologizing for them, softening them before they're even spoken. You don't sound like someone who believes in their words. You sound like someone who's asking for permission to speak. And that's not influence. That's survival and understanding. That's the cruelest trick of all. Anxiety makes you so focused on how you're being perceived that you stop communicating clearly. You rush, you over-explain, you cut yourself short. You talk in circles, hoping one version of your sentence will finally land right. But all that does is confuse the person listening. So instead of being understood, you walk away feeling misunderstood. And that only feeds the anxiety more. Here's the tough truth. Anxiety tells you that guarding yourself will protect connection, but the opposite is true. Guarding yourself weakens it. Influence comes when you show up fully. Connection comes when you let people see the unpolished version. Understanding comes when you speak with honesty, not apology. Anxiety steals all of that by convincing you that safety lies in defense. But the safety you're chasing, it's actually in being real. And this is where anxiety puts the most pressure on you. It convinces you that you have to be perfect. Every word has to land just right. Every pause has to be filled. Every stumble has to be avoided at all costs. It's like anxiety hands you a script and says, stick to this or you'll fail. But here's the problem. Conversations aren't meant to be scripted. They're meant to be lived. And when you try to make them perfect, you strip away the very thing that makes them human. So you start rushing through sentences, terrified of silence, as if a 2-second pause is proof you don't know what you're doing. You replay stumbles like they're catastrophes, even though the other person probably didn't even notice. You polish your thoughts so much that by the time they come out, they don't even sound like you anymore. And instead of feeling connected, you feel exhausted because you're performing a role you can never quite get right. The irony is, the things you're most afraid of, the pause, the stumble, the moment you lose your words, those are the things that actually make you relatable. They make you human. Nobody remembers a flawless conversation, but everybody remembers a real one, and real doesn't look like perfection. It looks like showing up, flaws and all, and trusting that who you are is already enough. And here's what anxiety doesn't want you to realize: most people aren't judging you the way you think they are. We walk into a conversation convinced that every word is under a spotlight, that every pause is being weighed, that every stumble is proof of weakness. But the truth, people are far too wrapped up in their own lives, their own worries, their own thoughts to dissect yours the way you do. You think they're holding on to every detail, but most of the time, they let it pass as quickly as it comes. Think about the last time someone else stumbled in front of you. Did you walk away replaying their every word? Did you hold onto their awkward pause? Probably not. You moved on. You gave them grace without even thinking about it. But when it's you, that grace disappears. You give yourself none. Anxiety blinds you to the fact that people aren't analyzing you under a microscope. They're just being human the same way you are. The truth is, people don't remember your exact words nearly as much as they remember how you made them feel. They don't care if you paused or said or lost your place. What they care about is whether you were present, whether you were genuine, whether you actually connected. Anxiety makes you think the tiny details are the whole story, but to everyone else, they're just background noise. And this is where the whole game changes. Conversations aren't auditions, and they're not tests, but anxiety convinces you otherwise. It makes you feel like you're walking into a room with a panel of judges, like every word you say is being graded, like you're either going to pass or fail at simply talking. That's why you tighten up. That's why you overthink. That's why you walk away exhausted. You treated something human like it was a performance. But think about it. When was the last time you actually graded someone else's conversation? You didn't. You weren't sitting there with a scorecard. You were just listening, maybe laughing, maybe relating. That's all conversations are, moments to build a bridge between two people. They're not competitions, they're not interviews, they're not auditions for approval. They're bridges, and bridges don't need to be flawless, they just need to hold. When you stop treating every interaction like a test to pass, you finally give yourself permission to just be. To let the silence breathe, to let your words stumble, to let your personality come through without polishing it for fear of rejection. Because no one's holding up a scoreboard, no one's waiting for you to mess up. They just want to connect. And connection doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. And here's the freedom you've been looking for: authenticity always beats perfection. We get so caught up thinking the polished version of ourselves is what people want. The version that never stumbles, never hesitates, never says the wrong thing. But people don't connect to polished, they connect to real. They connect to the little quirks, the nervous laugh, the way your eyes light up when you talk about something you care about. That's the stuff that sticks. That's the stuff that makes you memorable. When you chase perfection, you sand down all the edges that make you unique. You start sounding safe, rehearsed, generic, and safe might protect you from embarrassment, but it also protects you from connection. Because nobody feels drawn to a script, they feel drawn to a story. And your story isn't perfect. It's messy. It's flawed. It's human. And that's exactly what makes it powerful. Anxiety tells you perfection will make people accept you. But it's authenticity that makes people trust you. It's authenticity that makes them lean in, that makes them feel seen. Because when you're real, you give them permission to be real too. And that's the kind of moment no polished line could ever create. And here's the part anxiety never wants you to figure out. You can take back control. You don't have to let it drive every word, every pause, every reaction. You get to slow down, breathe, and remind yourself that you're not in danger. Because that's all anxiety really is. A false alarm blaring in moments that don't require it. And the moment you recognize it, you weaken its grip. Next time you feel it creeping in, do the simplest thing. Pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't scramble for the perfect response. Just breathe. That pause isn't weakness, it's power. It tells your brain, I'm safe here. I don't need to perform. And when you step into that space, your voice starts to come back. Not the shaky, defensive voice anxiety gives you, the grounded voice that's been there all along. A stumble. That's not failure, that's authenticity. A pause, that's not awkward, that's presence. A moment of not knowing what to say. That's not weakness, that's honesty. And the people around you don't need the perfectly polished version of you. They need the human version. Because that's the one they can trust. That's the one they can connect to. That's the one that actually builds the bridge. Anxiety may try to hijack the conversation, but you decide whether it keeps the keys. And the second you choose to show up real instead of rehearsed, you take back the wheel. That's when conversations stop being battles in your head and start being bridges in your life. So here's the truth: anxiety is always going to try and step in. It's always going to whisper that you're not enough, that you have to perform, that you have to defend, that you're being judged. But conversations were never meant to be cages. They were meant to be connections. The moment you stop treating every word like a test and start letting yourself show up as you are, that's when things change. Because people don't need the perfect version of you, they need the present one. They don't need a flawless performance. They need an honest connection. Anxiety may hijack the ride, but it doesn't get to own your voice. Every time you choose presence over performance, authenticity over perfection, engagement over defense, you're taking it back. And little by little, those conversations stop being battles you replay and start being bridges you remember. That's the kind of power anxiety can't touch.